This week, the two largest suppliers of RV components, Lippert and Patrick Industries, are considering merging. A proposed shutdown of 14,000 acres of boondocking land in Utah, a major recall of Ford and Ram trucks, and a new device aimed at stopping water leaks in RVs. All that and more. I'm Jason Epperson. This is RV Miles, and it's time for the latest in RV and camping news. Welcome back, everybody. If you're watching on YouTube and not listening on the podcast feed, you're getting your first real peek at our new set that we've been working on for quite some time here in the studio in downtown Rock Island, Illinois. We'll be hopefully kind of debuting the whole thing this weekend on the next episode of the podcast, but this is what you get for now. I'm very excited about being able to use this, and thanks so much for your support over the years. This really helped us build the content machine that we're striving to create here, a place that we can really quickly record and get the latest news out to you, and so much more of all the different types of content that we aim to make here, whether it's on RV Miles over on the Parkography channel. So again, many thanks. First up, two of the biggest names in RV components say they're discussing a possible merger. You've certainly heard of the first company, Lippert Components, who have parts in nearly every RV that's made. Lippert makes most of the trailer chassis on the market. They make suspensions, leveling systems, appliances, awnings, furniture, so much more. They have brands like Furrion, Kurt, Solera, Thomas Paine, Greystone, Happy Jack, Everchill. They're a $3 billion public corporation trading on the New York Stock Exchange. The other company you might not have heard of, Patrick Industries. Patrick is actually the more valuable company and makes most of those same products. If it's on your RV and it's not Lippert, there's a good chance it's from Patrick, whether it's bath surrounds, sinks, speakers, cabinet doors, countertops, flooring, fiberglass front caps, furniture, or aluminum siding. They make wrapped moldings, plywood, and composite wall panels, faucets, sinks, lighting fixtures, wiring harnesses, glass, roofing membranes, sealants, and glues. You might not have heard of them or one of their subsidiaries, but there's also a really good chance your RV has many Patrick Industries products on it. Patrick and Lippert Components both confirmed after the market closed last Friday via separate press releases that they are in talks about what they describe as a potential merger of equals. The party said they're discussing a possible transaction, but added that there's no assurance that a deal will happen or what form it might take. So for now, this is still just a discussion, not a signed deal. Both Patrick and Lippert also said they don't plan to comment further unless an agreement is reached or talks are ended. If a deal does come together, it would bring two of the largest component manufacturers in the industry under one umbrella. And I know a lot of people already think of Lippert as a monopoly with a very strong hold on the industry. Lippert does have serious competitors in every line of its products, but the biggest of those competitors is Patrick. Combined, the two sell the lion's share of parts, appliances, and materials that RV manufacturers use to assemble their products, but also the marine industry, manufactured housing, and more. A combined company would have an incredible stronghold and influence over RV manufacturing. Patrick also brings to the table several businesses that Lippert doesn't have, particularly lumber supplies and RV transporting. This is a merger really worth keeping an eye on that could have major ramifications for the RV industry going forward. A story we covered over on the National Park and Public Lands News Roundup last week over on Parkography, but I wanted to make sure RVers heard it here. The Bureau of Land Management is moving forward with a plan that would ban dispersed camping across nearly 14,000 acres of public land near Zion National Park, including some of the most popular free camping areas along Utah State Route 9, the main gateway into the park. These are places many campers rely on: Hurricane Cliffs, Gooseberry Mesa, Smithsonian Butte. For years, campers have been able to pull off, find a legal spot, and stay for free as long as they followed some basic rules. But under the new proposal, the BLM wants to concentrate overnight use into designated areas and new developed campgrounds. 2 new campgrounds are proposed with a combined 230 sites. About 30 designated dispersed sites would remain. The BLM says the current situation isn't sustainable, with Zion seeing millions of visitors a year and up to 19,000 people a day in peak season. Nearby public lands have essentially become overflow camping, and the impacts are showing, according to the BLM. They say years of dispersed camping have led to soil compaction and vegetation loss. trash and human waste issues, and a proliferation of illegal fire rings. Their solution is to concentrate camping in already disturbed areas like a former quarry rather than allowing it to spread across the landscape. Access advocates argue that this is about more than just environmental protection, it's about affordability and access to public lands. Dispersed camping has long been the pressure valve around Zion. When campgrounds book out months in advance, and they do, it's often the only way campers can stay anywhere near the park. Critics say that eliminating dispersed camping will push people further out or out entirely. Supporters of the plan, including some conservation groups, argue the opposite, that concentrating use is necessary to protect fragile desert ecosystems and prevent long-term damage. The plan's now in its final stage with an appeal deadline set for April 22nd. After that, the Interior Board of Land Appeals will decide whether it moves forward. And just a reminder that all of our national parks and public lands news is over on the Parkography channel. So I hope you'll subscribe over there as well as here, but sometimes there's a big overlap and I try to cover it on both channels, like this story, which is about camping. More in a moment, but first, this episode is sponsored by RVMattress.com by Brooklyn Bedding. Get a real mattress for your RV instead of the cheap piece of foam that it came with at RVMattress.com by Brooklyn Bedding. They sell real mattresses and all the odd sizes RVs require, like short kings, Olympic queens, and odd bunk sizes, different thicknesses, and more. Their mattresses are toxin-free, they're made in their factory in Arizona and shipped to you vacuum-sealed wherever you are. You just unwrap them and let them expand. They have a 120-night sleep trial, free shipping, and a limited lifetime warranty. But the best part is that the RV Miles community gets 30% off. It's the best deal they ever offer any day of the year with code RV Miles at RVMattress.com/RV Miles. That's RVMattress.com/RV Miles with the code RV Miles at checkout for 30% off. It's getting really rough for Ford with recalls lately. Ford is recalling about 1.4 million F-150 pickups in the U.S. following an investigation by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA. The recall affects 2015 to 2017 models equipped with the 6-speed 6R80 transmission. According to federal regulators, a problem with the transmission range sensor can send incorrect signals, potentially causing the truck to suddenly downshift while driving. Reports have vehicles dropping into second gear at highway speeds. Ford says the issue is likely caused by heat and vibration over time, degrading electrical connections in that sensor. NHTSA has linked the problem to at least one crash and 2 possible injuries. A sudden downshift while towing could create a dangerous situation, particularly at highway speeds or on steep grades. But here's the head scratcher for me. The fix is that dealers will update the truck's powertrain control module software. If the issue is heat and vibration degrading an electrical connection, how does a software update fix that problem? We've seen a lot of software update recalls lately for problems that really sound more physical to me. We saw a software update last year to fix Super Duty diesel issues with the CP4 pump. I'm not saying these software updates don't maybe help, but they don't sound like a solve either. And Chrysler is recalling 65,000 2025 and 2026 Ram pickups, the full range from 1,500 on up to the 5,500. A software error may cause the instrument panel display to fail. Another software update. Make sure to watch for owner notification letters and check your vehicles on the NHTSA website. You can check by both your VIN and your license plate number. Fuel prices have taken their first dip in weeks amidst a cooling of tensions between the U.S., Israel, and Iran, though the Strait of Hormuz has yet to fully open, locking up 20% of the world's oil. Some recent back-and-forth violations of a ceasefire don't give much hope that it will fully open promptly. Still, oil prices dropped upon the announcement of the ceasefire and fuel prices followed. A gallon of regular gasoline is $4.04 on average nationwide, down 8 cents from last Monday and down 13 cents from the $4.17 high for this year set on April 8th. Diesel is down 8 cents from last Monday to $5.53. Gas remains about 90 cents higher than a year ago, while diesel is about $2 more per gallon than a year ago. Some of that recent drop may also be attributed to gas tax holidays. 3 states have announced gas tax holidays: Georgia, Indiana, and Utah, though Utah's doesn't take effect until July and is only a 15% reduction. But several other states are considering gas tax holidays as well. Also coming this summer, we'll see more ethanol fuel at pumps with the institution of another E15 waiver by the EPA for summer blend fuel, allowing 15% ethanol to be blended with gasoline instead of 10%. Higher ethanol blends can evaporate more easily in hotter temperatures, increasing volatile emissions. 15% ethanol is usually not allowed to be sold in the US between June 1st and September 15th without a waiver from the EPA. E15 or 15% ethanol gas holds slightly less energy than the typical 10% ethanol that you'll see at the pump. It's about 2% less efficient, but it's about 10% cheaper. All gasoline engine vehicles can use E10. Currently, most light-duty vehicles with a model year of 2001 or newer are approved by the EPA to use E15. Flex fuel vehicles can use any ethanol gasoline blends up to E85. So it shouldn't be an issue for you if you run into it at a station. You're really not going to notice much of a difference. We've generally seen nationwide E15 waivers the last several years, so this is nothing new, but pre-pandemic, they were generally only used for localized emergencies like a refinery fire or something like that. Authorities in Benton County, Arkansas are investigating what they're calling a devastating act of arson that destroyed multiple trailers and motorhomes earlier this week. According to KFSM TV Channel 5, the fire happened April 14th at a consignment lot operated by Scotty's RV near Beaver Lake. The Benton County Sheriff's Office says the RVs were set on fire on purpose and vandalized in other undisclosed ways. The owner of Scotty's RVs called the incident inconceivable, saying that the damage is truly devastating and a reward is now being offered for any information leading to an arrest. Investigators believe the crime was bold enough that someone may have seen something, and they're asking anyone with information to come forward. If you store your RV off-site or if you're planning on selling it via consignment, it's your insurance that covers it, so make sure you're up to date, and it's worth asking about security measures and cameras and lighting and gated access and all that sort of stuff. Blue Technology has announced the launch of its new Waterstop system, an RV water flow device designed to catch leaks early and automatically shut off the water before a small problem turns into a much bigger repair bill. According to Blue Technology, Waterstop is a patent-pending RV leak detection and automatic water shutoff system and uses both continuous flow monitoring and wireless leak sensors to watch for trouble and automatically close the valve if it detects a leak or abnormal water flow. The device comes with one wireless leak sensor that you can place under your kitchen sink or near your water heater, and it'll support up to 7 additional leak sensors, which are sold separately. If moisture is detected, the system sends an alert via an app and automatically shuts off the incoming water supply. The unit also allows RVers to manually turn the water on or off through an app or with a wireless remote. Waterstop also tracks water usage, flow rate, and consumption time. It seems like it's kind of like a smart surge protector, but for water. Blue says the system can also monitor filter life and send maintenance reminders when water filtration systems are nearing the end of their service life. There's one big drawback, though. It's the price. It's a steep $479.99, but it could save you thousands in repair bills one day if you're somebody that develops a leak. I've seen it, and it's not pretty. Finally, KOA has released its annual camping report, a survey of over 4,000 camping households across the general U.S. population, showing that RV ownership held stable in 2025 over 2024, but it's down about a third over pandemic highs. Camping participation across all types of camping has remained fairly flat, but who is camping is changing. There was a massive increase in the number of baby boomers who are camping from 2024 to 25. But a big reduction in millennials, Gen Z campers, families who camp with children, and non-white campers. Solo camping has also taken a dive, and a growing number of campers are choosing glamping, cabins, yurts, luxury canvas tents, etc., as their preferred way to visit the outdoors, surpassing RVing. Abby and I break down the stats in depth over on episode 406 of the RV Miles podcast, as well as giving our thoughts on the potential Patrick and Lippert merger. We hope to see you over there. The video version is on the YouTube channel, where you can find it on any podcast app. And I want to give a shout out to our mile marker community. Mile markers are sort of paid support community, like a Patreon. They are the ones that really make everything we do happen, from making the studio happen to supporting our writers and so much more. They get extra content like some additional fun after the show podcast episodes. We do live streams once a month with them. We have a book club. We have a fantasy football league and more. But really, it's just a way to support everything we do here. It helps keep us away from the AI machine. It helps us produce real content by humans. And if you like that, it's $7 a month or $70 a year. And we are so grateful for mile markers and their support. But if you can't do that, we totally understand. Hit the like button if you got something in this episode. Subscribe if you want more like it. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.